if you try to follow trends, you're just playing like catch up, in a way. You're trying to catch up to people and doing something that is probably not natural to you.
This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Control, the all-in-one finance app for freelancers. Control is a super cool finance app that lets you see all your income and business expenses in one spot, combines all your bank accounts, you can automatically calculate and pay your quarterly taxes, which is super important so you don't get penalties from the IRS. You can see insights into all your financial performances, how much money you made, and you can easily see how much cash you have on hand so you know how much to spend or save. So set some new financial goals for yourself. Head over to the link in the description, Control HQ. Thanks so much, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the Jesse Nyberg Podcast. I'm here with Otherworld, super dope digital NFT designer, artist that I've been kind of looking into for a while now. Met him through one of my friends, and how's it going, man?
It's going good, man. How are you?
Pretty good. What you been kind of up to today?
Today, I spent so I'm a PhD student, so I spent most of my time in the lab, setting up experiments, teaching undergrads, that sort of thing. And then, I've just been at home kind of preparing for this.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, it must be, I know you told me a little bit off air, and I remember talking to Buddy about it, how you do engineering, and then you also have this, almost whole nother persona online with all the art stuff. Does it ever feel like you're living two different lives kind of?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like all connected, but it does feel separate at times. It's just like two different fields. And I think if you look at my art, you won't really tell that I do science or engineering. Like I don't really put that much of it into it. But yeah, it's definitely together. They both influence each other, but also separate. Yeah,
because that's a good point. You would think, like, I see a lot of people that are into like engineering and architecture. If they do design or artwork, it's very like rigid and like algorithmic and maybe like a lot of diagrams and shit. But your stuff's like super kind of free form, and I feel like it looks like colored pencil-esque like kind of style. And I feel like it must that's probably like a good feeling because you have these two different things, and then you kind of don't get bored of either because they're so different.
Yeah. I started kind of making the art around when it was like the pandemic, and I mean, I've always made art, like kind of doodle and that sort of thing, but I started taking it seriously and trying to develop more of my style when COVID started and the pandemic hit. And then my lab is like in person, so we work with like cells and that sort of thing. So whenever the labs shut down temporarily, I think for like 3 months, I was still working full time from home, but it was like, it really wasn't full time. It wasn't as much to do, and it was like really more boring for me because I don't really like just to like write or read. So I picked up the digital art, and it kind of like made things fun for me during that pandemic when everything was closed. That's how that started.
Yeah, because with the labs and all that, that's one of those things where it doesn't really work on like Zoom and all that. It's like you need to be in there like actually experimenting and whatnot.
Yeah. There's, I mean, some fields, like they could do it from home, most of like the humanities, those type of fields. But for like biology, unless you're doing computational biology, which I don't do and I don't really like, it was basically kind of shut down for like a few months.
Yeah, that's like a lot of people that I've talked to with COVID. Not only did maybe they already had an interest in art, or they were already doing a lot of design, but it really like, gravitated their freelancing or their side stuff because it was kind of like either you're bored or you need money, or like you just need something to do without kind of feeling like you're going crazy. And what were you doing before you like went deep into it? Like during COVID, were you just always kind of doing art like on the side at all?
So I mean, I started making art. I mean, always as a kid, like I liked drawing and
Yeah.
doodling, and mostly it would just be like pencil drawings, you know, in class, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Cartoon characters, just funny drawings, or sometimes also violent drawings. But
Yeah.
um, and yeah, I just kind of did that over time. And I went to art class for like a year. I
Mhm.
think I was like in middle school, and it was very like traditional art, like learning art techniques and oil painting, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Um, and I liked it at first, but after I was there for like a year, it kind of became more of like a chore and kind of like
Mm.
a school type of thing. And
Yeah.
I didn't really like that after a year. So I stopped going to art school, still kind of doodled here and there. But when I started um, my time at undergraduate school, I didn't have any time for art. I
Mhm.
basically, for most of those 4 years, didn't really draw or paint except for like very rarely.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, until the end of, let's say, my last semester, I had more time on my hands, and
Mhm.
because I took all the harder classes and I just had a couple easy classes and a lot of
Mhm.
free time. So I
Yeah.
started like painting with acrylics, like kind of like cartoony stuff. Um, it's like I posted some of them on my Instagram, like very first post I ever made.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really different from what I do today, but that's how I started kind of getting back into the art. And I wanted to like make clothing.
Mhm.
Um, and I tried getting into the digital, like with the iPad, and I tried painting on like, it's called the program I use is Procreate. So
Right.
I tried painting the same style I would paint with acrylics on the digital, and I didn't really like that. It wasn't like this natural feel.
Yeah, it's different.
It didn't feel right. Um, so I stopped with the digital for a while, but then I picked it up during the pandemic, and I started doing more like collage related things. So it was more of like taking
Right.
images that existed, editing them, combining them with other images, and creating like a new piece out of it. And that was like something that was really new, really fresh, and I really enjoyed.
Mhm.
Um, I would kind of just mostly listen to music and then make a piece based off like a song, you know, and the mood
Yeah.
of the song. Um, just going with the flow for the most of it. And then over time, as I got used to the program and used to like that digital feel, I incorporated more like drawings, and then
Mhm.
that somehow led to the art I make today.
Yeah, that's dope. I remember seeing like some of your, I don't know how early it was, but when I first kind of saw your page from the mutual friend that we know, it was very like a lot of it was, it looked like the drawing over like old, Renaissance paintings and like old pop culture stuff like Jordan or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I was like got interested in it, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And I always wondered, now that I know you use Procreate, I didn't know if you were using like actual colored pencil or you were painting on this stuff or how you were doing it, but it looks very it still looks very analog, I feel like, even though you're saying it's done in
Really?
Procreate.
Yeah, I try to make, when things look too, I don't like it when they look too digital.
Yeah.
Um, so I try to like, I use brushes that kind of have like sort of like a texture in a way to them.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's
Yeah,
my
I feel the
approach.
same way. Like even a lot of the stuff I've been doing lately, like I try to mix a lot of analog things, but even when it isn't analog, just adding texture and stuff to make it feel more like it's something that would live in a real space, just kind
Mhm.
of overall makes it feel better. Like I don't know how to genuinely like describe it, but when something's so
Yeah.
digital or just black and flat, it feels like there's no like nothing to touch, and kind
Yeah,
of
exactly.
lifeless in a way.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I haven't really been able to like, it's really hard to capture like the textures of a physical painting in the digital. I've rarely seen it be done, and I haven't really tried too hard to do that, but like it would take me a lot of practice and
Yeah.
to maybe get there. But yeah, like for example, some artists paint on like wood and like wooden
Right.
planks, and that has like a really nice texture to it. And just the texture alone,
Mhm.
makes the piece that much more special.
Yeah, and then there's almost like I've seen some acrylic painting that use like wood panels and stuff that are really smooth, and it's almost like there's almost no texture. Like it's surprising how smooth it is when you see it because you're so used to like acrylic or oil having all the canvas show through, you know?
Yep. Yeah, I've seen those too. What you paint on is a really big deal, and it gives that piece kind of like this mood from the start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely like a whole part of the thing. Like I feel like I always see people asking artists like, what brushes do you use? Like what kind of paint do you use? But I don't ever see a lot of people asking about canvases or materials for like the actual like the background. And yeah, it's all the way from like a super rough like burlap canvas to like Procreate on the iPad. That's going to give you such a different look and final result.
Yeah. Clothing is like another thing I see people like drawing on and painting on, and I haven't really had the time to do that. But a friend of mine, she goes to like, she works in like this fashion industry, and they had a couple like sample like puffer jackets just laying around, and she's like, do you want some? And I was like, yeah, just give me all of them. So that's something I'm gonna do probably in the next couple of weeks, try to paint on those or get something printed on those jackets. But yeah,
that'd be dope, especially if you're able to get them in bulk like that and kind of start from, they're just plain, right? Like black or something.
They're plain, and she had like 4 of them, 4 extras or something. They're just all white. So
dope. Yeah, like the trash bag style kind of ones, like the big puffers.
Yeah, it kind of has like almost like pillows on it type of thing,
Yeah,
kind of like those puffer jackets.
Yeah, that's an interesting material too, probably to go on, because it's so like so squishy. Like there's not a lot of solid. You can't really push hard on it, I would assume.
Yeah, I think it's some sort of polyester from what it looked like from the pictures. So I wonder how printing on that is going to be, or painting. Yeah. Figure it out. I guess I'll experiment with it.
Does your so you said you're doing like, you have students now, right, in your doctorate? So do your students have any idea of all this other stuff that you're doing, you think?
I think, well, a few people like that I work with in my lab do. People like a couple of people my age.
Okay.
But I haven't really, I mean, I tell people I make art, but I don't tell them like I do NFTs, or I don't go too in depth with it.
Right.
At least I haven't yet.
Yeah. Because you like to keep it like pretty separate, right? Your scientific like career and your art career, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I like to keep it separate. I guess people haven't really gone, like they haven't asked me too many things about it. Like they'll ask me about the art and like just things about it, but I feel I've never felt it natural, like me bringing up like, oh yeah, I sold this piece for this much. It would kind of be like, I don't know, I just haven't done that yet, kind of.
Yeah, I'm sure like your colleagues too would be like surprised to hear, this thing sold for like this much Ethereum, and they'd be like, geez, like why are you even working here or something?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's, my professors I think would be really surprised. Colleagues too, yeah. I'm surprised. I'm not surprised, but I'm like, it's such a new economy, it's such a new thing where like I wasn't expecting, like I didn't know about NFTs when I first started making art. And I think it hasn't even been a year. It'll be like, I think it's like 11 months or something I've been in it. But yeah, it's just something so new that so many people don't know about. Like it's on Twitter, that's all I see are NFTs because that's who I follow.
It's like an echo chamber over there.
Yeah, it's like mostly what my feed is, but and I feel like it's gone pretty popular, but most people still don't know about it.
Yeah, and I feel like even the people that don't know, like I don't know enough to, when they ask me, like I know enough to explain what it is in a sense, but like I can't explain fully to someone like how everything works, because then they're just like, what do you mean, like why would someone buy it? It's just a thing. And I'm like, I don't know, man, like it's all like perceived value really, and just like a bunch of different stuff. I
mean, if you think about it, that's what like everything is in a way.
Yeah.
Besides like basic needs, but I don't know exactly how the code works either. Like, I don't like coding and that sort of thing. But when people ask me like, oh, what's an NFT? Like, why does it have value? I'm like, well, it's kind of like Bitcoin. Like the thing that gives Bitcoin its value is that it could be stored and it's verifiable on this blockchain, and everybody has access to that information. And you can't just make a Bitcoin appear out of thin air. Someone has to send you one,
Right.
And that's kind of how I explain things, because more people are familiar with like Bitcoin, and even if they don't understand it fully, they understand it to an extent, and
they heard it from their friend or something, at least.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, an NFT is kind of like a Bitcoin, but each NFT is unique, and it's like a one of one, or you could have like limited edition NFTs, but it's kind of like a Bitcoin, but it's a picture.
Right.
That's kind of how I explain it to like the average Joe.
Have you ever, or not have you ever, what kind of got you interested in that whole world? Because if you said it was maybe like 11 months ago and you started really getting into art when COVID happened, that means that, you were doing art again for like a little less than a year, and then you got into the NFTs?
Yeah, I was making art since I started posting daily in like April on my Instagram. And yeah, I was kind of making a collage every day or every other day. And I was only on Instagram. Okay. And I never heard about NFTs until I got on Twitter. And my friend Avaj, he's also an artist. His name is Ajay. But we met like in undergrad, and he was kind of posting his music. He was making music, and he was also posting some of the photos he took on Twitter, and he had group chats going. And that's kind of the thing on Twitter, where you have this artist group chats, and artists get together and kind of meet each other. They promote their work, so everybody like kind of supports each other. So he like invited me to a couple of those, and I followed those people, and then they started like tweeting or retweeting about like NFTs, and then I read on it. And Super Rare was like the first one I saw, like the first website. Yeah. And back then, like, NFTs were just starting to kind of get rolling. And I think Ethereum was like $300 back then.
Yeah, I remember.
And when I first heard about Ethereum, like within like a couple weeks or a month, it went up to like $600, and that was like pretty crazy to people. But yeah, everybody wanted to get on like Super Rare. And I think I heard about NFTs like in August or October, but I didn't apply until like December or something, until I knew I was ready and I had like this style going for me. But yeah, Twitter is where I learned about NFTs.
Yeah. Is it like, I know you're in school, so doing that stuff with NFTs and selling for pretty, like, I looked at some of the Super Rare stuff and it's done like pretty well. Has that been like, how does that feel? Has that been pretty life-changing, or are you kind of just keeping it all in crypto? I would think you're using some of that money, right, for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I keep like a healthy balance in both, like both in crypto, and I take some out too, just for like expenses, that sort of thing. Right. Yeah, when I first started, and I think I sold a piece for like, it was like 7 Ethereum. It was like my second NFT, a Game of Souls. It's like the chess piece. And that's like, it was like $8,000 at the time. And that was like a lot of money. I was like,
damn, for 7? So that was a while ago then.
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought about like, oh man, like, what if I just quit school and I do this? You know, I thought about that a little bit. Yeah. And then, but I was like, I'm still interested in the science, so I didn't quit, you know, and I'm still going to do my PhD and complete it, no matter how much money I make.
Right. That's good.
But yeah, that was a thought that came to me. And yeah, it has helped out, you know, with the pandemic, and, you know, it's been hard on the economy for people. And like, you have these NFTs that came out of nowhere, and a lot of artists just quit their jobs and they're full-time artists.
Yeah.
And they've made more with these NFTs than they ever have with like the conventional methods of like selling prints or doing commissions. Like I used to do commissions, but it's kind of not many artists like doing commissions, you know, unless it's someone you really want to work with and they're kind of open with the commission, because sometimes they're very like direct with what they want. They have this image in their head and they want you to like recreate that, which is impossible.
Right. And as like a fine artist, I feel like, versus like myself as being more of a traditional like designer, you're not always working with clients. So like once you start doing commissions, you're like, Jesus, I don't want to listen to these people, you know, and do everything they say. Cause I feel like the beauty of like fine art is people do it because they want to be able to express themselves like how they want, and they don't want people to be telling them. And I think that is the cool part about NFTs, is that it's allowed people to kind of be more free with it. And I'm sure even with you saying you want to complete your degree still, the cool thing about it is it'll allow you to be more like selective and free with like even what you want to do in your science stuff, because you know you have this other like I guess alternative source of income or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. It's kind of, you know, with the science, I don't have a specific career goal in mind. You know, there's a few different routes you could go. It's like you could stay in academia, you could go do a postdoc, which is like you're just doing more research at a university. You're a doctor, you know, you have the degree, you're a doctor, but you still don't get paid too much and you still do research, and it's really like time consuming and hectic.
Yeah.
People do that for another like 4 to 6 years after their PhD. And, you know, sometimes they do like 2 postdocs if you want to like be a professor or something like that. So I originally started my PhD because I did want to go on and like have my own research lab and become a professor. But just over time, I learned that that's not for me. It's just a very super high anxiety, very busy schedule. And it's kind of like, there's not many openings for that. And you have to be very dedicated. And let's say you apply for a professorship. If you get, you know, a position in like Germany and you don't want to go to Germany, but you pretty much have to take it because it's like,
I see.
Oh, you know, it's very low chance to even get an offer. Yeah. Unless you had like, you worked in a really famous lab and you had like a really breakthrough paper that was like cited by a bunch of other papers and really like got noticed. Unless you have that, and a lot of luck plays into that also. So, you know, those are the type of people who really have like a choices to pick from where they want to work as a professor. But even
so what's
then,
your exact like degree? Like what have you studied?
Yeah, it's in bioengineering.
Okay. So I heard you say engineering and then biology, and I was like, maybe it's both of those combined.
Yeah, it's both of those combined. I work in like tissue engineering, so trying to create new methods of building tissues in the lab, so we don't have to test on like animals, which are not very, you know, they're so much different than the human body. So like drugs that we test on animals, it doesn't always mean it's going to work on humans the same way.
Yeah, that's a good point. We are very different from animals, so I'm sure it's not exactly the same. So I wanted to ask you this before we kind of talked about some of your background like we did, but so knowing now what you've been doing with NFTs and digital art, and then I saw you did like your own little gallery and shit that looked cool, and then doing all your other world of academia and realizing it may not be for you. If you had to cut one out right now, what would you do? You can only pursue one.
If I had to choose between science and art, I would choose art right now. Science, the way my research has been, it's like, it's such a roller coaster thing where it's like you'll be failing experiments for like months, and you'll be kind of don't know where to go for a couple months, and then you'll have this like, okay, finally like a couple experiments worked, and like that's kind of a lot of students' experiences if they're working on something that's very like new, novel, and it's like, you know, this engineering approach, you're trying to create something new. So that's, you know, it's good when it works, but it's also very like risky. And I feel like art is just more fun more of the time, but you still get those like really happy moments, you know, and it's less of the bad moments, I would say.
Yeah. It's so interesting hearing you say that engineering is more risky than like being an artist for yourself, at least, because, you know, you hear all you hear in like academia is like STEM, you know. STEM is like security, you get the good job, you do what you do, and then all you also hear is people discouraging like people pursuing arts and things. So it's a good way to vouch for it.
Yeah, I mean if you go through university and you go in STEM, and you know, you could definitely get like a job that could feed you, and you'll have enough money to support yourself.
Right.
But like research, the research itself is like risky. So like there's students and there's PhD students who just kind of get unlucky, and the project they work on, or maybe their professor they're working under, gives them like a shitty project, and which is kind of like a dead end, and they might work on it for years, and then kind of it goes to waste. It doesn't go to waste, but it's kind of like nothing useful comes out of that, really. So that's like the risky part, and I don't think that's going to happen to me. Like the project I'm working on is pretty interesting, but that's still, I still look at it as like more risky than at least where I'm at right now with my art. You know, the risky part I see with my art is like if something like if the NFT market crashes or something. Yeah. But then it's like I've wanted to make clothes, and I'll do that, or you know, or just make art.
Keep it open.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's cool that like I'm sure art, and you know, you can create a piece and put it out, feels good in a relatively short amount of time compared to you're working on this singular research project for like years, right? So yeah, it's like a whole different, that's more long-term gratification versus like short-term.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've thought about when I do finish this project and submit it, it's going to be, you know, amazing. That feeling will be amazing. And art has kind of given me more of like short-term gratification. Where you make an art piece. I used to do one like once a day, but now it's like once a month, which is still good, and I can work more on the piece. But
because your style's kind of evolved into more like less going collage and going over stuff, and more like from scratch, I guess, like blank canvas.
Yeah, I mean, I still pick like old paintings to reimagine,
reference and stuff.
And a lot of my characters are based off of the characters in the old painting. And I use collages more like for the background and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's a lot more like drawing and hand drawing with these pieces.
Yeah. When did you kind of start to develop out I don't even know what to call it, like the ghouls or whatever, like the black figures with the smiles kind of?
Yeah, I call them like the fiends. Is what I call them. Fiends.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't know. I started like, I wanted to kind of have my own like signature, I would say. And my art has always been very like colorful. So, and I've also liked the collage approach. So I took like older paintings or like images and tried to like make my own characters on those. And like it started off with like the robes, and the robes were like, I try to make them like colorful and like kind of psychedelic. And even these fiend characters, if you look back, they've evolved a lot. Like just the way I draw them, they used to be much more like simple and like kind of like flat in a way, with not too much detail. But yeah, as I just kind of developed that and wanted them to really look just look better, you know. I remember I was talking to one of my friends when I was doing like the collage stuff. I'm like I like my art and the way it's looking, but I want to make art that I could see like in galleries and in museums, you know. Those type of art, like it's just a kind of different feeling than what's posted regularly on social media. So that's the route I went.
What's interesting about that too is that the art that's more like fine art or whatever and takes maybe some more time in planning tends to perform worse than like the quick, like rapid firing everyday pieces online. So it's almost like two different approaches. Like, yeah, this might not get you a ton of likes on social media when you work on it for a whole month and don't post anything for a month, but it could be something that can be an NFT or sold in a physical gallery versus aiding the other like world of like the algorithm and all that shit. You're trying to post collages and stuff every day, and I've always found it weird to find a balance between those two things, you know?
Yeah, and it's tough to do both. And if you do both, that's like amazing art. I see a lot of art that's kind of, you know, funny or simple or very like relatable, or like the colors are really nice, and it's just something that is nice to look at. And those type of art, they do like a lot of numbers on like Twitter and Instagram, and people get a lot of attention, and also they sell like prints and that sort of thing because there's just so much traffic going to that post. But I haven't seen too much of that type of art do well in the NFT world. It's kind of like two different audiences, I feel like, where the NFT, you know, investors, they want like art that's kind of unique and different and kind of will stand the test of time in a way. Whereas the stuff that does really well on social media is like things that are relatable to the general public and just to people that maybe are not even into art, but if they see it, they're going to like it.
Yeah, it's like quick to consume, but also quick to get rid of, you know, versus the other one's hard, maybe not appeal to everyone, but it appeals to the right type of people that you're trying to target. Like in my niche, the things I always see just blow up on Instagram, like aren't necessarily the most sophisticated, like graphic design or typography, but the messaging is just like maybe like meme related, you know, or super like relatable. Everyone puts it in their story, but that's not the same type of thing you'd be putting at like Christie's or whatever, you know, and like selling it in the fine art market. So
yeah, exactly. That's how I see it as well.
Yeah, I've noticed even with your characters, you say getting them more complicated or whatever. Even the robes seem to have more texture and detail in the way you colorize them and things. And those robes kind of came from the old paintings then, right? You said like the brown kind of monk robes.
Yeah. So like some of the paintings that like I paint over, the characters themselves have those robes, and like I kind of learned through like drawing over those robes and kind of learning how to, you know, close fold and that sort of thing from those you know, and those painters, like they're like masters of their craft. Like I can never do that what they did. That's sort of like how I learned how to draw robes better. And you know, I draw all my characters with robes, and sometimes in those paintings there's a lot of characters that don't have robes, or like the robes are in a different way that I want them, and so I'll draw the robes over those characters. And you might be able to tell a difference, I'm not sure, but so there's
it's like juxtaposition too between not only your work is a lot less like I guess like for lack of a better word, like blended, you know, like the creases in the robes are a lot more rigid, and as well as the colors, like you wouldn't see like the kind of psychedelic like pop art colors in any of these Renaissance paintings, you know, that were traditionally like everything's like brown, you know, and muted and stuff.
Yeah, a lot of the art is muted and you know, because they try to go for this realistic look. Yeah. But there is also art that I've seen that's surprisingly colorful in a realistic way. You know, they'll have like blues and reds that are, you know, pop at you, but it's not like neon, you know.
Right. Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed with your work that's super consistent is the choice of colors, and not only the colors themselves like in the hue, but the actual like saturation and like the
Mhm.
shade of it, because they're always very bright and they really stand out when you're putting them over that old stuff, because it's just like it's almost like jarring at first, you know, to look at, because you have these like muted browns and yellows and then it's just like pink on it, you know, or something
Yeah.
like that.
No, yeah, I appreciate that. It's like, yeah, color has always been something that I think like if you use it right, it can make a piece look beautiful.
Mhm.
And yeah, I really like that kind of new school pop art like look, that, you know, colorful look that, you know, you haven't really seen throughout history as much. Like for example, Kaz or like Murakami,
Yeah,
they really use color very well in some of their pieces, especially Murakami. That's like what
right.
he's known for, is his colors. Um, so that's something I try to like take and use in my work.
Hmm. Yeah, Murakami's like a perfect example of like how powerful color is, because if he didn't have a good way of color, like his work would maybe feel repetitive after a while. But he makes so much stuff in the, you know, he has his flower patterns and other like tropes he uses, but it always feels like fresh, even though it's like kind of the
Hmm.
same, but he's just switching up like colors and composition and stuff, really.
Yeah, like he has that one flower that just with different color schemes, and it's kind of like color schemes that I would not think of using, but like he makes it work. And it's not even, sometimes you'll have like brown with, you know, something like red or like a blue,
Hmm.
um, that like I don't really, for in my art, I don't like paint my robes brown or tan, that sort of thing. It's something I've thought of, but I haven't been able to incorporate. But it's something that he does like seamlessly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen you also introduce some in your recent stuff, like uh, you're starting to introduce some more like characters or however you want to reference them other than like the fiends. Like I really like, I have it pulled up right here. I don't know what it was called exactly. The sheep with sharp teeth or whatever.
Yeah.
That post, like that type of like, I don't know, wolf type like ghoul or whatever. I feel like that's a super dope type character. And I've seen a few other like they kind of have a similar feel to the fiends, but they're also, you know,
Yeah.
more I guess detailed in the face and things. And is that something you're planning on, like are you planning on expanding into like a new realm with that?
Yeah. I, so those pieces are usually not based on like any painting or that sort of thing. Um, and yeah, I still kind of approach it with like the same colors that I use
Hmm.
for the fiends, but it's more of like yeah, just a different approach and a different kind of framing of the work. Um, like the sheep with sharp teeth. Um, I really like that piece just
Yeah, that one's cool.
as like a storytelling piece. It was kind of like uh, influenced and by like Scarface, the movie. Uh,
Mm.
but yeah, those characters I do plan on exploring more in the future.
Yeah, that's dope. As someone who I feel like I have very mixed opinions on this whole world of NFTs, and not only the stuff that gets produced in there, but just crypto in general. But uh, as someone who creates like fine art and something that I think is beautiful and takes time, how do you feel in relation to like all the generative work and stuff? Do you think that do you like that exists? I guess
Um,
my question.
so there's like really good generative projects, and there's also things that are clearly like cash grabs and just like
Yeah.
low quality work. Um, so things that are like good, for example, like CryptoPunks, they're sought after because like the history
Right.
of them. You know, they're one of the first like projects. Um, and then you have like the Bored Apes Yacht Club, and
Hmm.
those ones initially when I first saw them, uh, I didn't really like them because I thought they were trying to be like CryptoPunks, but and then they got caught on Populator, and then I kind of understood what they were doing.
Yeah.
So they're also like good and they have this really strong community around them. And then you have things that are like artists, like for example, Art Blocks is like this group that drops generative projects from different artists each time. And you have artists who are very like their native work is like doing this generative stuff. Like I forgot his first name, but I think his last name was like Hobbs, and he did like Fidenzas, and Fidenzas it was like a generative art pieces, but it's really nice to look at, and it's like you could see those people frame them in their house and it looks like fine art. So yeah, I also feel like two different ways. There's the projects that are done well and like you could tell the creators are passionate about it. I think those are, you know, should be there and they're important, but the ones that are like cash grabs, those are kind of I don't really like those. And like I've thought about doing my own generative collection, but I haven't really thought of something good enough in a way, you know, like I can make characters with my art, but it's like that's been done a lot before, and it may or may not do well, but I'd rather make just one pieces, and I feel that's what I'm good at. So I haven't really touched the collection generative art thing yet.
Right. It's interesting to see too how, like, don't get me wrong, like some of the really expensive like non-generative art, like Ferocious and all that stuff, like it obviously sells for crazy amounts, but it seems like from a non-art person that is getting into NFTs from a monetary or technology or investment standpoint, you know, the generative stuff is where it's at, because it's like it's more obvious what the value is behind it, and like it's collectible, and it has more like it's almost more accessible, because it's like, even not in money wise, because some of them get expensive, but it's kind of people know that feeling. It's like trading Yu-Gi-Oh cards or something, you know, it feels like that. But with the fine art, it feels a lot more like, how do you value it? Like how you would like a traditional painting. But so I think that's where they do have a place. But yeah, some of them I get so much like spam DMs and shit too nowadays. Like, check out we got the llamas now or whatever it is. And it's just like some other bullshit, you know?
It's like ridiculous. I don't know if you use Discord, but like my Discord, it's all my DMs are just people just throwing new projects at you. And that's the thing about this generative art. It's kind of, if they build a good community around it, it's more of a safe investment in a way, you know, at least in the short term, which most people are in it to make a short-term flip. Whereas if you're investing in an artist, you know, it's one person, and it's kind of like you have to find them early on. If you find them later on when they're established, they're already expensive. And if you find them early on, you're betting on one person that they're going to continue to do this and continue to grow and evolve over time. So it's more risky.
Right. You're kind of investing in the human themselves almost as much as like each individual piece.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's all crazy. Like, it's so hard to even like we were talking earlier, like just looking at it from the outside, it's very like, no wonder everyone's confused about it, you know, like just people that aren't on Twitter. Cause like you said, you go on Twitter, and I'm not all up in NFTs, but I even follow enough people where it seems like that's all there is on Twitter. You know, it's like, it's become such an echo chamber, but I don't know. I guess I'm just super torn on it, cause there's people like you, I think, that are doing cool shit. And then there's other, like, I get a lot of people also, not only the spam DMs, but they're like impersonating, you know, like it'll be like, hey, this is like the Punk's like director or whatever, like send me your wallet address or something.
Oh yeah. Like, I had some guy like DM me a while ago. It was basically when like NFTs were like, they blew up, and they kind of had like this slow market time for like a couple months. They were pretty slow. And like, I didn't really sell any pieces during that time. And like some guy hit me up, and he was like, oh, I want to buy this. I had it available. It was it was the one before the wolf. And he was like, I'll buy this off you for like 2 Ethereum, but like my previous piece had sold for like 7 or 8, something like that. And I was like, no, like I'd rather just wait, for example. Right. And this guy got very like frustrated with me, and he was like, you're never gonna sell a piece again, like you'll never sell for that much, like you're so like this and that, blah blah blah. And then he like blocked me, and then he came back with another account, and he's like, this is actually Beanie, and Beanie is like a well-known collector. He goes by Beanie, and his like avatar is a CryptoPunk with the beanie hat. And he's like, this is actually Beanie, and I'll give you one more chance, I'm like, dude, you're not Beanie, like you're just like why would that collector come and harass me, like, you know what I mean? People right. like impersonate collectors, artists, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's wild, especially like people like I think could be so easily scammed. Like you just need like a CryptoPunk, Avi, and you could probably get people to do some like fucked up shit. Really, what's crazy about those OG like generative stuff, like the punks and the apes, is it's almost like the value in it is not only in what it's worth, but what it can like gain for you. Like you become like an insider, you become cool in this whole community because like it gives you like it's almost like your identity all of a sudden or something.
Yeah, a lot of people, the collectors, their identity is the CryptoPunk. Like their name is like the ID of the CryptoPunk, like 6529 or something like that, or like Punk 45 something, so it's powerful in that sense. And some people have written like threads about it, like, why is this CryptoPunk so useful to me? He's like, I only trade with people that have CryptoPunks, and if somebody has a CryptoPunk and I can see that it's actually theirs and they verified it, it's like I automatically trust that person. Within that group, they trust each other more.
Right.
So yeah, it's that community that it builds.
Yeah, it's crazy. With the, I guess enough of that NFT stuff, that's all I had there. But with the gallery stuff that you did recently, you posted, how was that? Was that a pretty cool experience with doing a lot of digital stuff mostly?
Yeah, that was, it was the Uzumaki gallery, and she's another artist. You should check her out if you haven't seen her stuff, but she makes like textile art and like furniture with these like really colorful fabrics and furs. And she like reached out to me, and she's like, hey, I think your art would look good in my gallery. And she had like this gallery in downtown LA. So I had my art there for a couple months, and then
it's like a pop-up kind of type thing.
She was like working out of there, so she was making her art out of there, and she just had my pieces and some other art there.
Yeah.
So that was the first one, and then she moved. So that one closed down, and now she's in New York. So that was a cool experience. But yeah, I'm gonna have my art in Art Basel in Miami in December. So that's something I'm looking forward to.
Are you going out there to like set that up and everything?
Yeah. So it's gonna be through Super Rare. They're gonna set up everything, but I'm gonna be one of the artists that they're like showing. So I don't have to set anything up. I'm currently working on the piece, and I have about like a month to finish it. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna go out and check it out and kind of take that weekend off and meet the people. And yeah.
Is it gonna be like a digital and a physical type like sale thing if it's Super Rare's doing it?
They're gonna do like all of the NFTs are gonna be showing. It's gonna be just a digital screen, like big digital screens that they're gonna be showing
like that?
Yeah. They had a pop-up, not a pop-up, but they had like a booth at the LA Art Show earlier a couple months ago. And they did the same thing where they had like these digital digital displays.
Yeah.
And then it's just crazy how the NFTs, like a lot of those NFTs sold for a good amount. Like for example, one of them sold for like 60,000, for example, and then like you would go and walk around and you'd see all this like physical art, and they would be priced way lower, and even there would be some like really like there was a certain section of the art show that was like old art, like the 1700s, 1800s, and there was some stuff that was really expensive, like hundreds of thousands, but there were also stuff that was less expensive than like the NFT that just sold. which is
Yeah,
pretty
that's
crazy.
crazy. I've seen some of those screen things too, like this artist Malavita. I don't know if you
Hmm.
know her she does
Yeah.
all those. Yeah, like I had her on recently. She does all the spiral, I guess, liquidy type textures
Hmm.
and stuff. And seeing that kind of shit that's like so colorful on the big screens, like I'm sure that persuades people to want to buy it more because it's just like mesmerizing, and these big
Yeah.
ass panels and everything.
Yeah, it's just so different than like what's the physical art. And
Yeah.
yeah, her work, I really like her work. It's just very like psychedelic, and a lot of people try to imitate that style, but
Hmm.
it doesn't have the quality, it doesn't have the detail that hers does. Very few
Yeah,
people capture that.
we had talked about that a bit, and that's a good feeling. Like it sucks to be imitated, but it's also cool when other outside people look at it and say like it's not the same though, like it's very
Yeah.
validating to know that people are like vouching it for you or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and if you make art that like is good, people are just gonna they're gonna want to naturally just imitate it or like take parts of it into their work,
Hmm.
which if done respectfully, I think it's good. But if it's like a blatant copy, I think that's
Right.
very like, people don't deal with that, basically. Like,
Have you experienced any of that anywhere from the respectful way to the like, full on like plagiarism or whatever?
yeah, respectful way. I've had like artists DM me and tell me like, hey, I really got inspiration from this and
Hmm.
I made this piece and I think that's cool. Or like this one NFT artist, he would do like very like chaotic pieces, and in one of them he had like my fiend character in it, just like it wasn't like the main part of it, so I didn't really care, and it was
A little
nice to
Easter
see.
egg.
Yeah, Easter egg type of thing.
Yeah.
um but I've had, I mean, yeah, this one guy was kind of a little bit, he like was respectful and he approached me um with what he was doing, but it was very similar to mine, like really really similar.
Hmm.
But I was like, you could, it's kind of similar, but you could post it, and if people compare it to my work, and you could continue or you could not, I mean, it's up to you. I was like that.
Yeah.
I've had,
Kind of putting it on him, like the
I was just
burden
like,
on
you
him.
could do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then one time I saw like an OpenSea account that was just my work. They had just like saved it and they
Oh
were
shit.
just selling it, but it didn't really, I don't think they really sold anything, and they were selling it for like 0.01 Ethereum or like point 0.1,
Oh,
like
like super cheap compared to
super
your
super
actual
cheap.
stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, it's happened a few times like that, but I haven't had any like super bad experiences with that.
Yeah. What kind of stuff do you get inspiration from these days for your work?
I mean, yeah, I get a lot of inspiration from, I guess, a lot of different artists I see. Of course, like Kaz, Murakami, those were like some of the
Right.
big names that I knew before I really got deep into the art. And then a lot of like the old artists like Caravaggio, um, that era of art, I really also enjoy seeing.
Hmm.
I get inspiration from more like for the characters and the stories in a way. Um, I get a lot of inspiration from music. I'll take some of the titles, maybe not like a lot of the new art, but like some of the older titles were like music lyrics, and just heavily inspired by music. Um,
Any
yeah,
genres specifically?
I listen to a lot of like, these days I listen to a lot of like house music,
Right.
but like Zoo. I don't know if you've heard of him, ZHU.
Hmm.
He's I don't know if I would classify him as house, but he's in the EDM type of thing, house
Yeah.
tech
I
house
mean,
type of
that
thing.
shit's huge. He's
Yeah,
huge.
and
Even though I don't listen to it, I know about it.
yeah, he's my favorite artist, like musician, just period. Like that's my top guy.
Hmm.
So I get a lot of inspiration. I've made a lot of pieces that are inspired by his music. Um, yeah, and then some other artists, like one that stands out a lot is like, his name is Etienne Kraus. And he does digital work, but it's very like fine art feel to it, and it's like stuff that you would for sure see in a museum and a gallery. And he's also pretty successful in the NFT world. X Copy, I'm sure you've heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of like, I sometimes show people, his art, and I just ask them, hey, what do you think about this? And almost all the time they're like, yeah, it's cool. It's just, they think it's cool, but they don't think too much of it. And I tell them like, yeah, this sold for like $1 million. And they're like, what? Like, what? They get confused. And then,
yeah.
But I think that his art is like, it's the art that people are going to talk about in like the art history books in, 30, 50 years. They're going to be like, this guy was one of the pioneers of the NFT art. Inspiration.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy when kids are going to school and it's going to go from like, Keith Haring or something, and then the next like chapters like Beeple or some shit.
Yeah, Beeple. Beeple's a crazy guy. His art is pretty crazy.
They're going to have to add like, I never even looked at it that way. Teaching art and history and just, I guess the pioneers, we haven't really, I felt like there hasn't really been a pioneers since like computers started, like obviously when they invented computers, people, or when in Photoshop and all that, some of those people you could call like pioneers of that. But before that, there wasn't anything that like new happening. It only would happen every like 20, 30 years, it seemed like, or like, and then back in the day, even farther apart, like they'd stick in a style for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Now you have all the digital shit. So I think we live in such a different landscape than like ever before with how trends are and how things change. And I can't even imagine now like what stuff's going to look like in, even like 30 years. I feel like you're going to be able to like imagine something in your mind and it creates it with AI or some shit,
Yeah, there's so many approaches people take with it, like a lot of generative art, a lot of like people coding computers to make art, for that type of thing. And I think that's crazy. That's something that I think is so interesting, and I wish I had the time to try out. But I'm not like well versed in it, and it would just take way too much time to get into that.
Yeah. Also, the science stuff you do is already so like in depth and hard. I would think to someone like me trying it that I feel like you don't have the bandwidth to go into a whole nother crazy like computer science too.
No, if I had like the time for something, another hobby, it would be music. I would want to make music, but that's like, music takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
I downloaded, I forgot which program it was. The icon is like
Ableton or something.
Yeah, something like, I downloaded something like that, and I gave it like a couple hours and I couldn't figure it out, and I just uninstalled it. I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
But yeah, it takes a lot of patience. Yeah, and to your point where like the trends in the art, even in the past year, there's been a lot of trends that have came and went so quickly. Like there was a lot of, I think initially in the NFT space, a lot of what I saw was like 3D art and like motion art, and that's still a thing, but it was like even really like basic 3D art was getting more attention than like the 2D basic drawings.
Yeah,
but now
that was
like,
frustrating.
Yeah, now it got like, it's pretty evened out where like 2D artists, like, Ferocious is mostly like a 2D artist, and and they're at the top of the game, with what they do.
Yeah.
And then you have X Copy, who is, he has animations and it's like a GIF, but it's not 3D. So yeah, a lot of people took that bait, and I almost took the bait of like 3D. I was like talking to, his name is Zach. He goes by Super Rare Roses. He's on like the Super Rare team. It was at the LA Art Show. I was like, yeah, I want to maybe try like 3D and animation. He's like, don't do it just to do it. Like what you have is good. If it's gonna add something to your art, go for it. Right. But if you're doing it just to do it, like don't do that. It's a trap.
I saw that happen a lot, and you could easily tell the people that the style they already worked in just catered to that, and which was already cool, and they did great. And then it's like every person I ever known, it seemed like on Instagram was like, downloading Blender and trying to create like astronauts and shit. And it was like
the astronauts
all the same,
big. Exactly. Yep.
I'm glad I didn't do that because I definitely would have regretted it now looking at it in hindsight. Because I was like, I got to get into 3D or else I'm never going to be able to get into this. And I was like, fuck it. I think the people that do the best in NFT, normal, just art sales, like, are the people that don't worry about what's going on and they let the trends revolve around them rather than, give into what's cool or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. If you try to follow trends, you're just playing like catch up, in a way. You're trying to catch up to people doing something that is probably not natural to you. Yeah.
Do you have what else do you have? You have anything planned for the future besides just that digital space?
Clothing drop is, I've been planning this for like, I've had it ready for like a couple months. Like the designs have been ready, but there's been a lot of hold up on like the t-shirts actually getting here because of COVID and shortages. Okay. But yeah, I got like a shipment a few days ago, finally arrived after a couple months. I dropped some off to get printed. So I should have some clothing coming out probably this end of this week if it all goes to plan.
Oh, cool. That might already be out then by the time you hear this, if you're listening, or maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, cool. But other than that, if you guys want to check out the Patreon, we're going to do a Q&A with Otherworld, a couple of questions that got submitted. But I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, man. It was great meeting you.
No, man, I appreciate the opportunity and it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, most def. So you can check him out, Otherworld_XX on Instagram. And then is everything just Otherworld everywhere you're at pretty much online?
Yeah, it's the same handle on Instagram and Twitter. That's the only two I use other than like super rare.
Okay. All right, cool. So go check him out and then head over to the Patreon if you want to hear more, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.
See you.